Channel open. Welcome back to WeeklyTrek, a Star Trek news podcast presented by TrekCore.com. I am your host, Alex Perry.
What's today's date? The date.
Today's show was recorded on February 22nd, 2026, and is current through the Star Trek Starfleet Academy Season 1 episode Cosine, so beware of spoilers. All right, let's get into the show.
Good day, Voyager, and welcome to A Briefing with Neelix. It's a catchy title, isn't it?
WeeklyTrek is a regular news show covering the biggest stories from the Star Trek franchise. We are in the Alex Kurtzman era of Star Trek, with the 12th television show currently in production, and 14 movies to enjoy, and merchandise continuing to fill the Bajoran wormhole. So stick with me, and I'll help you sort the real facts from a lot of the Dominion propaganda that you'll find online. But I can't do this alone, and my guest this week is the Final Frontiersman co-host, Bill Barbato. Bill, welcome to WeeklyTrek.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this all week, so thank you.
All right, Bill. Well, I ask my guests this question every week. I want to know something that's got you excited about Star Trek at the moment. What's got you moving at Warp 10?
This week, I am very excited because if anyone knows me from my YouTube channel, I am huge on the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game. And my group finally got back after an extremely long hiatus, and this morning we had a great return session. We're back in the world of Star Trek. We're back into our own little original series that we are creating, and we just had a blast, and I'm feeling great about it.
Tell me about I want to know the setting. I want to know what the story to date has been. Tell me a little bit about your crew.
Okay, well, it is set post-Dominion War right now. We started at the very tail end of the Dominion War, but my crew, their ship, they were not part of the war. They were sent into what is the original setting for Star Trek Adventures called the Shackleton Expanse. It's an area of space that's just beyond the Klingon and Romulan borders in the Beta Quadrant. So it's a completely new setting but it's not too far away like Voyager was so distant, so you're still kind of close to the Federation. But the crew themselves, it's a small ship. It's a Nova-class ship. We have a half Klingon captain now, and we have a variety of crew members. And currently, we're in the middle of the way we have it broken down in seasons. We're in the middle of the second season, episode 5 out of 10. We are revisiting one of the key stories from the first season, where one member of the crew was, I guess, cloned by the transporter, but he doesn't know he was cloned because the one version of him was rescued and got away with the ship, but way back in season 1, the other version of him that was imprisoned on the planet was never discovered. So we're having a follow-up on that, and it's turning out pretty exciting.
Very cool. Are you the GM or are you one of the players?
I'm the GM. I'm what they call a forever GM. I've been a GM for about 30 years. I rarely get to play.
And what do you like most about being GM?
I love telling stories. I like making stories, and I like the improv of it because I can set up a tale, I could set up a plot, but I have no idea where the players are going to take it. So I have to work on the fly of where the story moves from here, how we're going to adapt, and how we're going to incorporate all the really crazy but cool decisions that they come up with.
And what's the biggest curveball that your players have ever thrown you during the middle of a session?
Oh my goodness, the biggest is almost like a unexpected curveball nearly every single session. I would say probably the biggest one would be I don't know why, but they just decide that they had no intention of going down on the one planet where the problem was happening during one episode. And I'm like, okay, well, I gotta figure out what to do now because all the action's on the planet. So yeah, it's a situation like that where it's like, okay, if they go down, they might do this, they might do that, they might do that. But I never thought they won't go down at all.
Funny. I also GM a Star Trek Adventures group.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we've been going for almost a year. We're 7 or 8 months now. We're episode 7 we just did of the first season. It's like well post-Dominion War. It's sort of post-Prodigy. It's the USS Dauntless from that show being dispatched back to the Delta Quadrant for a new exploratory mission with with its slipstream drive. And in our last episode, the ship was sent on a mission by Starfleet to investigate a collapsing star and discovered that some unknown race was causing the star to go supernova in a way that looks very similar to what, at this point in the timeline, is in the process of happening to the Romulan star. So, yes, so some Kelvin timeline setup tie-in is currently underway in that mission, and I'm having a lot of fun with it.
I love that, and I have to say I'm impressed that you said you're playing for a year, a bit over a year more, and you're on episode 7. I said we are on season 2, episode 5. This is our 6th year because that's how long it takes us to schedule things. We don't move fast. You're at a good pace right now.
Yeah, we've gotten into pretty good. We do one pretty much every month. I think we've only missed 1 month since we started. Sometimes they'll be like 2 weeks apart. Sometimes they'll be like 6 weeks apart. But we had a January session. We've got a February session. We've had our February session. We've got March and April and May scheduled. So that'll take us up to the season finale of season 1.
That is impressive. The big issue with my group is with the scheduling, its location. Like I'm in Japan, and we have 1 member's in Australia. We have 2 in Germany, 1 in the UK, 1 in South Africa, and some in the US. So finding a day and time with everyone's schedule that doesn't collapse, that's the real reason why it's dragging out so long. But I'm proud of my group. They've been sticking with it for 5-6 years now without giving up. So yeah, kudos to them, and good for your crew. You got a routine down. I'm proud of that.
A little easier for us. Of the 6 players, 5 of them are in Eastern time zone in the US and 1 is in the UK. So it's not so challenging to. And it's like I have 6 players, so it's like as long as we have 3, we can do a session. Yeah, so we just sort of, as long as we have more than 3, we go with whoever's able to make it.
So you are the GM too for your group?
That's right, yeah.
Can I ask you the same question? What do you like about GM?
I really like when people get really into it. Like, I enjoy coming up with the stories myself. When this is my second group I've GM'd. The first group I did sort of just like a quick 6 sessions. I was sort of subbing in for our regular GM. I was a player with that group. It was my first experience doing it, and I started off using the sort of pre-written missions, but quickly decided I wanted to take the story in a certain direction. In order to do that, I kind of had to write my own stuff. So now I'm writing my own stuff and creating my own sort of stories and missions, and I really like it when I think I have a good idea, and for something that'll be fun, like a story that'll be fun, or a story that has like a really difficult decision that the players really have to kind of grapple with and sort of struggle with making. And my favorite thing is like when that actually happens, right? When they get as into the story as I am, and like really sort of engage with what's happening and the setting. And I'm very blessed that all of my friends who are part of doing this are like hyper Star Trek fans, like, love the world, collectively could write Memory Alpha from cover to cover. And so, if I throw in little Easter eggs or stuff, like they typically don't get missed, they get picked up on. And yeah, so it's fun to sort of like build out, like work with them on sort of building out the story and the series and trying to get the characters fleshed out. We sort of are intercutting between doing character episodes that are about individual characters with sort of ensemble episodes that are more, like tell a bigger story. And it's fun to kind of go between them and do the different kinds of things. And everybody seems like they're having fun. And to me, that's the best part about it.
That's the goal. If everyone's having fun, yourself included, you're doing it right.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let me tell you what I'm feeling good about Star Trek this week, which is that the nacelle company revealed this week that shipping has resumed for their Wave 1 Star Trek action figures. there's this new line of Star Trek action figures, 7-inch Star Trek action figures, beginning with characters like Weyoun, Captain Jellicoe, Captain Garrett, Peter Preston from Star Trek 2, Valkyrie from Star Trek 3. After they started shipping at the end of the year and then stopped because of quality control issues and had to go back and remanufacture a number of the Wave 1 figures, they are now in hand, and it sounds like are shipping, and they've shown pictures of what the new versions look like, and they look really, really great. And so I'm just really excited to finally, after, I think it's actually been now a year since Wave 1 was put up for pre-order, now that they're shipping those out to folks. So that's really exciting, and hopefully bodes well for Waves 2, 3, and 4 that have been announced or put up for pre-order. So yeah, I'm excited to get my hands on those when they arrive.
That's definitely awesome. Now, is that when you do the order, is it the full set of them, or do you just order the ones you want? Is it piecemeal, or does it come as one complete set?
Well, I have a mental illness that compels me to buy everything Star Trek, so I order the full set. But you don't have to. if
you
some
don't
of
have
those,
to.
Exactly. If some of those characters sound more appealing than others, you can just. I think the first wave was eight figures. I think the ones I mentioned. There's 2 Vics as well.
Oh wow, nice.
Yeah, and they started off with this sort of like deep cut character wave for the first couple, and then the third wave will be the full TOS crew, and then they'll sort of cut back and forth between doing the like deep cut characters and then doing a full series crew. So
I might have to get a Weyoun. That's my thing, though. I might need a Weyoun on my shelf somewhere.
I mean, it comes with a slice of pizza and the chopsticks. Like, how can you not, right?
Well, now I'm sold.
All right. Well, with that, let's turn to the week's top stories.
There's a war going on, and I'm a reporter.
Well, the official Star Trek set tour in Ticonderoga, New York, the only licensed Star Trek set replica in the world, has set its sights on its next big addition, the fully refurbished original life-size filming model of the Galileo shuttlecraft from Star Trek, the original series. The set tour is currently raising funds on Kickstarter to build a permanent exhibition space for the shuttlecraft, which was restored by Star Trek superfans Adam and Leslie Schneider about a decade ago, after the shuttle had almost completely disintegrated from decades of neglect. Following the shuttle's immaculate restoration, it's been on exhibit at the USS Intrepid in New York and the Houston Space Center in Houston, Texas, but the shuttle is now in Ticonderoga and preparing to become part of the official Star Trek tour. The Kickstarter is seeking to raise funds to build a dedicated exhibit space for the Galileo, and as of recording of this episode, had already passed its initial funding goal of $100,000. As described in the Kickstarter, building a commercial hangar is no small feat, and neither is housing the Galileo. The foundation is poured, the contractor is ready, and permits are approved. The runway is clear. Now we need the funding to bring the structure to life. We've curated a collection of exclusive campaign-only rewards, many of which were created by artists who have helped shape the legacy of Star Trek. The Kickstarter is seeking to raise $250,000 in total to build the most impressive space possible to house the Galileo, and is well on the way with $141,000 already committed. If the fundraiser meets its maximum goal, the exhibit space will evoke the shuttle bay of the USS Enterprise and include a walkthrough observation deck simulation and a video wall to virtually take the Galileo to famous Star Trek planets or even outer space. Dedication of the new Galileo exhibit space and unveiling of the shuttlecraft display is set for September 18th to 20th, 2026, when the Star Trek set tour will be joined by George Takei and Walter Koenig. William Shatner will preview the new exhibit when he is at the tour for a weekend in June. There are many cool Kickstarter awards, including hats, shirts, and Galileo pins, as well as unique opportunities to interact with Shatner, Takei, and Koenig on their respective visits. The Kickstarter runs until Sunday, March 15th. Click through to the show notes and you'll find a link to the TrekCore news article, which will take you to the Kickstarter. Bill, have you ever visited the Star Trek set tour?
I have not, and I've always wanted to go. My uncle has gone at least once or twice, as he usually did a tour around the East Coast in the summertime with my cousin. He would tell me about it. He was a huge Star Trek fan his whole life. I've always wanted to go, and I kind of fear that I'm not going to get the chance. How about you? Have you been there?
I've been there 3 times.
Amazing.
I mean, it's not easy to get to.
That's what my uncle has said. It's a detour, and my aunt used to complain a lot back in the day.
Yeah, and I know you live in Japan, and, Japan to New York City, and then it's about another 6-hour drive from there all the way up to basically Vermont, which is where Ticonderoga is, I mean, it's a long journey. It's a bit of a drive, but it is worth doing. I mean, if you find yourself anywhere within, I would say, 700 miles of being close to it, have a real think about going and doing it, because it really is something else to step foot on the deck of the original series USS Enterprise, and over time, they've added new stuff. I mean, they were talking about adding TNG sets. I think that has sort of been put on the back burner because the building that they had identified where they wanted to build the TNG sets turned out to have a bunch of problems with it, and I think is no longer available anymore. So I don't know that that's going to happen, but I mean, there is really no better place for the Galileo probably in the world than alongside the set tour. And I think I'm not able to make the Star Trek set tours doing 2 big weekends this year for the 60th anniversary. One in June with William Shatner and a bunch of the sort of living TOS guest stars. I'm not able to make that because I'm going to a wedding that weekend. But I was excited to see they're doing this dedication in September, and Walt Koenig and George Takei are going to be there, and I definitely think I'm going to go up for that one. I have done one of the William Shatner weekends there before, so I have a picture of me with William Shatner on the bridge of the Enterprise, and that's wonderful. But they had previously announced a George and Walter visit, at this point, I think 3 or 4 years ago. It was sort of at the tail end of COVID. Maybe it was 2021, maybe early 2022. And that ultimately got cancelled. And so I think this is George and Walter's first visit there since it became sort of the official Star Trek set tour. Both of them went to film Star Trek New Voyages episodes when that's what the sets were being used for. But I think this is their first visit since it's become the official Star Trek tour, and I would definitely love to get a picture with George and Walter on the bridge of the Enterprise. So September 18th to 20th, was that when it was? Yeah, I think, September 18th to 20th. I've already put on my calendar. I think I'm planning to make a return trip. And since that's right around the 60th anniversary celebration too on September 8th, hey, going to the original series Star Trek set tour feels like a good way of sort of honoring the 60th.
Yeah, there's not really a better way of celebrating 60 years than with the actual people who were making the series and on the recreation of their bridge. I think you made the right choice.
Well, this past week saw the release of the new Star Trek Voyager game, Across the Unknown, across multiple platforms, and TrekMovie spoke with Excite Games CEO Patrick Streppel, who runs the company that developed the game. Streppel discussed the game's inclusion of voice acting roles for Tim Russ reprising his role as Tuvok and Robert Duncan McNeill reprising his role of Tom Paris by saying, quote, "We're extremely happy we got Tim Russ and Robbie Duncan McNeill to reprise their roles as Tuvok and Tom Paris for our game, reading their personal logs at the beginning of each sector. While some might have hoped for a full voiceover, we feel these logs not only add a lot of nostalgia, but also important background to the setup of each sector. As you can imagine, Tuvok and Paris have very different ways to tell the story and uniquely react to the player's decision." And in discussing the difficulty settings to the game, Streppel said, quote, "We have 3 difficulty settings ranging from an adventure mode that lets players focus more on the story to experiencing years of hell in the Delta Quadrant. But make no mistake, we have developed a survival game, and like in the show, players should feel the weight of command. While the game is not a roguelike, restarting a sector and improving your strategy is sometimes advisable and part of the challenge to be a Starfleet captain." Streppel also talked about how feedback the company received from the demo it released of the game last year informed the final product. "After releasing the demo, we got a lot of feedback from players," he said. "That is the reason we actually released it so early, knowing that the build at the time still had lots of issues, and we tried to incorporate as much as possible. Apart from the changes you mentioned, we took the combat feedback to heart and made several UI changes in order to make it more readable. As positioning is the key to win space combat in Star Trek, hitting weakened shields of vulnerable systems, the schematic of the enemy ship now shows the HP of each subsystem, and the targeting reticule shows if you are merely in range, or rather in the correct position, to hit the desired spot. That makes it much easier to time the firing of torpedoes or the use of hero skills." Streppel also indicated that while the company has the right to make additional games set in the 24th century, the company is focused on making Across the Unknown as much of a success as possible first. Bill, I think you have played a little of Star Trek Voyager Across the Unknown, and I would love to hear what your experience has been to date.
Yeah, a little might be the right thing. I've been losing sleep the past few days over this game because I can only really play when my children go to sleep. But yeah, I'm really digging it. Like, Voyager is my series. I love Voyager so much. There's many reasons I'm not going to get into it, but the fact that it's a simulation of the entirety of the Star Trek Voyager television series, but you are now put pretty much in the role of Janeway. Not exactly, but you are the one making the command decisions, making the dialogue decisions of how all of these famous encounters throughout the series are going to turn out. Include a little bit of RNG to make it iffy whether it's going to succeed or fail. Also improved by how well you're doing on the ship, how much you're upgrading things. And you get this new alternate universe version of Voyager. And I'm loving it. But I will say one thing I truly love is going into the ship, because you have to open up your ship panel and it looks like the LCAR's Master Systems display with the rooms there, and you choose clearing out which rooms, because everything's damaged when Voyager is sent to the Delta Quadrant. You choose where you're clearing out, what rooms you're building, what rooms you're putting power to, which ones you're upgrading, but you can zoom into the rooms and you see the slice of life of the officers living and working on Voyager, and it's just so immersive for me. Like, I can just sit there for 10 minutes staring at one of the rooms and just letting my imagination wander. So there's, for me as a Voyager fan, there is a lot to love, but the game is hard. Have you played it yourself?
Not, no, but that's what I asked on Blue Sky and on Threads, just for people to give me their kind of feedback on it. And I would say generally the feedback I've gotten tracks very similarly to yours. People really like it, but it's a tough game to play.
It's a tough game to play, and I'm only on the standard difficulty. I didn't start with the adventure, which might be a little bit better for somebody, especially if they're not really avid gamers, but they're Star Trek fans and they want to go through. It's still supposedly a decent challenge on adventure mode, but you're more likely to succeed and you need fewer resources. But even on standard, like, the balance, I keep asking myself, is this what it's like to be a starship captain? Because I'm always going to this system, to this department, and saying, okay, we need more power here, we need to fix that here, we need to research this. It's a juggle while you're maintaining everything. You gotta feed the crew, you gotta keep the ship fueled, you gotta scan for resources, you gotta trade. You even get to use the Aero shuttle that was never featured on Voyager, but you see at the bottom, and I finally got that out and making trades for us while we're exploring. It's really, you could tell it's something made with love by fans.
Would you say that as a result of having played this, you have a new respect for Captain Janeway?
I do. I honestly do, because you figure, they're in the Delta Quadrant. They don't have backup. They need to provide all the supplies for themselves. And that's the backdrop of the series, but you never get the bureaucracy of it and the Janeway sitting there till 3 a.m. trying to figure out how she's going to keep 100 people alive. But you have to do that. You're sitting there like, okay, I gotta feed them. If I put them on rations, they're not gonna like that, but I need to put them on rations until I could get enough food for them. So we need more hydroponics bays, but then we have to do this. Then we'll lose power from there. So yeah, I can see how tough her journey was, and I can see why sometimes she seems a little cold and a little forceful in her decisions throughout the series. But if that's what it's like for her, I think I can relate now.
I'm curious, as I was sort of thinking about this game, right? Like, it's a game about taking Voyager back to Earth. Yes. And there is a right way to play it, in the sense that the show basically lays out for you a set of right decisions that end up with Voyager back at the Alpha Quadrant, right? Avoid the Vidians, make alliances where possible with, various different alien races, kill Tuvix, bash Voyager into the Krenim time ship to reset the timeline for Year of Hell and avoid all of that. Like, steal a transwarp coil from the Borg to get 10,000 light years closer to home. Be nice to Kess to get 10,000 light years closer to home, right? Like, there is a set of decisions that lays out a path to victory. As a Voyager superfan, and maybe you're not far enough into the game to tell me this yet, but like my sense of it is, or at least my sort of question is, if you know the show really well, does that make playing the game feel a bit redundant? Because it's like, well, I'm faced with a choice. Do I kill Tuvix or not kill Tuvix? Well, Janeway killed Tuvix, so I'll kill Tuvix because that seems like the right choice that would, like, does it feel like the game is tracking to the specific decisions that Janeway made along the way? Or do you feel like there's more freedom to get home the way that you as Captain Janeway decide you want to do it rather than Janeway on the show did it? Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes perfect sense. I would say there are multiple endings to the game depending on how you choose to get back. What you're talking about, the TV series, of course, they call it the canon ending, where it's maybe not necessarily making all the exact decisions, but these people arrive with this technology, these ones are alive, but the game isn't leading you in that. And I think the game is more or less encouraging you to have your own Voyager experience. So, like, for example, the episode Faces with B'Elanna Torres, where she split into her human side and her Klingon side. I got through that recently. And in my version of it, I was able to use a device I got from the Vidians when they stole Tuvok's lungs instead of Neelix's. And I appeased them and we came to kind of a resolution. I was able to use that device to not only cure B'Elanna and restore her to her original self, but we also preserved the Klingon B'Elanna. So I now have 2 B'Elannas on my ship.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
That's what I was hoping you would tell me, because like you, I'm a Voyager superfan and I know the show really well. And so it's like, well, if it's just a case of the show only works if you don't remember the show well enough to be able to make the exact set of right choices as Janeway, it's like, well, I'm going to make those choices because, that's what I know how to do. But if it does feel like there is sort of an authentically different way of doing this, then that does open up a whole world of possibilities, not just for someone who's a casual Voyager fan, but someone like you who knows the show really, really well.
Exactly, yeah. There's so many different ways it can branch off. I think you could play multiple times and have a completely different voyage. In fact, you could even take the caretaker ray back immediately instead of destroying it and end the game right there by getting back to Earth. So there's multiple ways of playing it.
And that stuff you were saying was music to my ears around, like, being able to sort of open up the ship and look at the deck plans and the different rooms and, figure out the, like, power distribution across the rooms. Like, I could probably do that for days at a time. So maybe I should prioritize checking this one out.
Give it a shot, or at least a demo, and see how you feel about it.
Yeah. Well, IDW Comics have revealed new plans for Star Trek comics launching in 2026. And the biggest news is that the company is seeking to fill the 25th century-sized hole left in fans' hearts following the end of Star Trek Picard and the failure so far of Paramount Skydance to announce any new shows set in the TNG era. IDW's signature Star Trek comic will launch as a new monthly ongoing series by Christopher Cantwell, who previously wrote the Star Trek Defiant and Star Trek Red Shirts comics, and will center on Captain 7 of 9 and the crew of the USS Enterprise G. With art from Denise Menhier, the new series will tell the epic story about survival and legacy as a secret mission led by Captain 7 of 9 brings the Enterprise G beyond the 4 quadrants of the galaxy for the first time ever. The Enterprise ventures into a hidden region of space where time fractures, minds unravel, and an unseen power manipulates fear itself, testing whether the Federation's ideals of exploration are salvation or the universe's greatest mistake. But that's not all. Just as the Cisco-centered Star Trek comic had the Worf-centered Defiant comic as a companion series, this version of Star Trek will be getting its own companion, Star Trek 0 Point, from writer Charlie Jane Anders. While the Enterprise vanishes beyond the galaxy, Captain Raffi Musica commands a starship tasked with preventing tomorrow's disasters today, guided by a powerful artificial intelligence wearing the face of a familiar ally that may know too much and understand too little about hope. Star Trek will launch with issue 1 in September, and 0 Point follows with its issue 1 in October. October. In addition to the 2 monthly ongoing series, IDW has also announced 2 new one-shots. In May, Star Trek Celebrations returns to showcase stories about the franchise's queer characters, and a 60th anniversary one-shot special will also launch this September. Bill, do you think you will check out any of these new Star Trek comic releases?
Definitely, and I honestly didn't even know this series was coming out until you sent me this news release. I used to read some of the Star Trek comics back in the 90s. I was more of a superhero comic collector back then, but I always wanted a little bit more Star Trek stories. The recent Star Trek comics, I've checked out a couple of them, but in this case, Star Trek Legacy, I don't think we're ever going to get that series at this point. So this looks like the only chance I have to really see a Captain 7 and 9. And then with the companion series too, with Rafi as apparently a captain now too, this would be a great way to get a little more deeper detail, even if it's not officially 100% canon, but into the 25th century. And I'm all for that.
Yeah, me too. I mean, the recent Cisco series sort of proves that, like, as we have always known all along, and everybody's always been 100% honest about this, these comics are not canon. If the shows decide to go in a different direction, they decide to go in a different direction, right? Like the recent monthly ongoings that have Cisco coming back, well, Starfleet Academy establishes that probably didn't happen, right? And so, you know, I did see some people mad online for being like, well, I thought these comics were canon. It's like, no, they never were. They're in continuity. They're designed to work with the existing canon, but that doesn't mean that they shape what what future canon looks like. But at the same time, I love these characters, and as you say, right, like probably not going to get a chance to maybe see these characters again because you know the Star Trek Legacy thing doesn't sound like it's going anywhere. And so, or even if it does, even if tomorrow they announce a new Star Trek Legacy series, it's at least 2 years away from being on television. So why not have some comics in the interim that sort of focus on these amazing characters? Would love to see 7 of 9 more in command of the USS Enterprise. And so I think this is very cool. Definitely also interesting, you know, you sort of hinted at this, that like Raffi is, you know, sort of presented in the description as being a captain. We saw her as first officer of the Enterprise in the final moments of Star Trek Picard season 3. So curious what's going on there. I'm sure there's sort of, you know, some kind of story-based explanation for why that is. But I really enjoyed the Star Trek Defiant series by Christopher Cantwell. Also really loved his Iron Man run before he started doing Star Trek comics as well. And so really thrilled to see where this goes. And, you know, definitely will be a day one subscriber for both of these new Star Trek comics.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're now available in digital form too, so even someone far, far away like me can still get my hands on them. So that's one good thing about it, that I don't have to wait for importing and shipping. So I'm really excited because anything, even if it's not canon, if it inspires ideas, especially for a Star Trek Adventures role-playing game, I love to eat up all that new content that comes out.
Yes, I'm a digital comics reader as well because I have way too much stuff already, but also because the Comixology now Amazon Kindle guided view for comics is like how I was able to get into reading comic books. I was always had trouble with just like a page full of art and words and not knowing where my eyes should look. But having the kind of guided view sort of take me across the page in the right sort of order has massively helped my ability to read, process, and enjoy comics. And you know, Star Trek comics are no exception to that. But yes, it is nice not to have boxes full of hundreds of comic books as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, back in the US, those boxes exist somewhere for me.
Well, and lastly this week, Titan Books have announced their latest Star Trek reference book, Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, the making of the classic film from authors John and Maria Jose Tenuto. The book follows the author's previous books centered on Star Trek II and Star Trek III. Titan Books promises that The Voyage Home, the making of the classic film, will feature an in-depth look at the making of Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, featuring new and exclusive interviews and rarely seen production art and behind-the-scenes images. Go behind the scenes of one of the most beloved entries in the Star Trek saga. This definitive companion takes fans deep into the heart of the 1986 production that brought humor, heart, and humpback whales to the final frontier, packed with exclusive interviews, rare photographs, and untold story from cast and crew. This book reveals how director Leonard Nimoy and the creative team crafted a legendary time travel adventure. From the challenges of shooting on location in San Francisco to groundbreaking special effects needed to create the animatronic whales to the environmental message that still resonates today, this insider account celebrates the risks and rewards of boldly going in a new direction. The book is expected to release in September. Bill, are you a fan of Star Trek reference books?
I am a fan of reference books that are in universe. I'm not so much a fan for behind the scenes and making of sort of things. I like that information, but I don't typically seek it out on my own.
Yeah.
I'm more about the in-universe
You're a technical manual guy.
That's more my pace. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. John and Maria Jose Tenuto are very, if you're into that sort of Star Trek history and Star Trek production history, they are really, really knowledgeable about Star Trek history, and their books on Star Trek 2 and 3 are pretty good. And just yesterday, I listened to an old episode, by old, it was September of last year, episode of the Inglorious Treksperts, in which they had a panel at one of the Galaxy Cons with John and Maria Jose talking about, in this case, Star Trek 3, based off of their Star Trek 3 book. And it was really fascinating hearing them talk about earlier versions of the script and earlier versions of the story and some of the reasons why things, decisions that had been made for Star Trek 3 had been made. And I thought that was a really interesting conversation. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to this one, and hopefully they end up doing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 as well.
But I think fascinating and in-depth are good for these books because I've seen, not the entire book, but I've seen content from their Wrath of Khan book, the making of Wrath of Khan, and just the way the chapters were broken down and just packed full of content. I do like the style that the book was made, and I'm assuming that Star Trek 4's book is going to be in a very similar style to that because it feels almost like a magazine.
Yeah.
Not just a heavy technical book about the making of, which I unfortunately do have books that are like that for other franchises. The way the Wrath of Khan one was made, it's small enough, the sections, that they're easy to grab you. So people who are into the making of these movies and all the details that goes behind it that even a lot of Trek fans, a lot of Trekkies don't even know. I think this is the kind of stuff that they like. Personally, like I said, this isn't the information I go craving after, but if I come across it, you could be sure I'm going to read it.
Right, well, we've talked about the facts, and now let's offer our opinions on the Star Trek franchise.
Your opinion has been noted. Anything further?
So as we transition from the news section to the opinion section, each week my guest and I will give you a Star Trek opinion, wish, or theory we're nurturing that week about any aspect of the Star Trek franchise we want to opine on. So Bill, let's hear it. What's your big Star Trek opinion for this week?
I don't know if this is exactly the kind of opinion you're looking for, but an opinion that has been on my mind very recently.
That's exactly the kind of opinion I'm looking for, Bill.
Well, then here it goes. My opinion, for better or worse, is I think Star Trek should be free. It's getting buried between multiple streaming services. Sometimes they're being taken away. It's become a real problem in Japan here that now I can't access most of it. And I started a Star Trek course, like an elective course at the high school where I work. And this year, I had 2 terms, 2 different groups, and I'm trying to introduce them to Star Trek and the lessons that I teach and sort of its cultural impact, as well as a whole variety of things. And I'm getting students interested, and there are some students who've never heard of Star Trek because it doesn't really have that kind of pop culture effect here in Japan, especially with the recent generation. And there's some kids that became really interested in it, and they thought, oh, I would like to check it out. But now it's removed from every streaming service. And when I'm growing up, any weekend, I could just flip on the channel, find Star Trek, and that's pretty much how I got into it. So how are the newer generations, younger generation, or people that aren't exposed to it at a young age through their family, through their parents, don't know anything about it, how are they supposed to find it fall in love with it and become lifelong fans if you have to jump through countless hoops to even get a hold of it.
Is it available in Japan? I mean, is Japan one of the countries that has Paramount Plus?
It has Paramount Plus, but Paramount Plus does not carry any of the series except the newer ones.
Yeah.
It has only Discovery, Strange New Worlds, and Starfleet Academy. And as of last week, they announced that they're removing access to Paramount Plus from 3 of the main services that people use to connect to it. So all the big services that anyone in Japan would normally subscribe to, that they could also access Paramount Plus, it's being taken off of there. So they're limiting the ways people can actually find this stuff.
And now that the legacy shows have gone from Netflix, does that mean aside from buying the DVDs, is there any way to get access to those shows right now?
None. Absolutely none. And even the DVDs have been out of print for well over a decade in Japan.
Yeah.
So they're only available on the secondhand market. And again, if it's a new fan, you're not even going to be looking for old DVDs because you don't even know what this thing is.
Right. And that's so wild because, your point is well taken about Star Trek fandom being sort of smaller in Japan than it is in the US. But like based off of my sort of knowledge about, if you just look at like Star Trek merchandising, if you were to rank biggest markets in the world for Star Trek merchandise, USA number 1, UK and Germany duking it out for second and third place. And then, presumably Canada's probably in there as well. And then Japan, I think, like if you go back to the 2000s or to the 1990s, there was this really strong kind of Star Trek fan base in Japan and a lot of really interesting, like in some cases, Japanese exclusive merchandise things that like, there was a fully lit model of the Enterprise D that at the time was very affordable. Aoshima, I think, was the name of the company that made it. That is one of the nicest Enterprise D sort of mass market retail versions there's ever been. Devilishly difficult to get in the US, and especially now. I mean, you can get one on eBay, but it's probably going to cost you $700 or $800. I think they were like $100 when they were released. There have been various different like part work subscriptions in Japan that there never were here. There was, it didn't get very far, but there was an attempt to do a deck by deck build-up of the Enterprise D. So like Japan definitely is a Star Trek market because none of these things would have existed made by Japanese companies if there wasn't like a fan base. And yet for the franchise and for the corporation that owns it to have whiffed the ball so badly that most Star Trek is not available for Japanese viewers is like, I mean, that's really bad. It's bad enough that they, badly serve fans everywhere basically. But like, Japan's not it's not a complete nothing burger of a market for Star Trek historically. Japanese Star Trek fans exist and, and there is this sort of strong subset of interest in Star Trek in Japan. And for the franchise to be basically doing absolutely nothing to nurture and cater to that right now is a big mistake.
I agree 100% with that. Like you said, there was a really big push in the 2000s, especially around the release of the Kelvin movies.
Yeah.
And I saw the Kelvin movies here in Japan. I went to the releases. It was exciting. There are all those great things that you talk about, and then it's just gone. It's just vanished. And it's been like a staple on Netflix for well over a decade, and now that's gone too. So, like I said, they're removing the footprint and the ease of access to it. And I think that's a shame because how do they expect it? Like Japan is a place, and I mean, I'm sorry, I can only talk about Japan here because that's where I'm at, but it's a place that really clings to fads a lot. And when you take something out of the pop culture view, it fades away pretty quickly. Now, there's going to be a lot of sci-fi fans, or the otaku, as they call it, that are still latched onto it, and they'll be diehard fans forever. But if you want to keep it growing, if you want to keep it fresh with newer generations. You can't hide it like this. And that's what hurts.
Yeah. It's wild. I mean, Star Trek's a global product, and the franchise should treat it like a global product and not shortchange making the arrangements so that the show is available to anybody who wants to get hold of it, right? Like, because if they don't do that, they really are sort of limiting the future growth of the audience to just people in the US, and that's, you know, like, not a good path for Star Trek to be on.
That's for sure. Yeah, I agree with all of that.
All right, let me tell you my opinion for this week. And, you know, I'm just going to sort of reflect a little bit. One of the themes of this section of the show for me for the last couple of months has been what I would describe as the coarsening discourse around Star Trek Online. And it's gotten a bit worse in the last kind of week or so. And not from the sort of traditional crew making it worse, and I think this is an important moment for everybody to just take a step back and kind of for personal reflection about how we talk about things online. And I am, of course, referring to the controversy around the Star Trek Starfleet Academy episode Come Let's Away and the USS Miyazaki comic, and the questions that were quite aggressively sort of forwarded around whether the art for that comic had been generated by artificial intelligence or not. And, you know, there was a lot of controversy around, was this AI? People sort of indicating that there were tells that maybe this was something that had been generated by AI. And it has since been revealed that, you know, the company has given the name of the artist who created it and provided, you know, sort of, I'm not an artist, so like I don't fully understand this, but like has provided sort of the sketches and the layers to sort of show that like this wasn't created by artificial intelligence. And I don't really want to use this as an opportunity to kind of wade into the AI debate. I think it's a debate that's highly polarized and people have strong opinions either one way or the other, and nothing I say is going to change anybody's opinion about anything. And so, you know, everybody's entitled to their opinion and entitled to believe what they want to believe, but this is an example of a space where like it just has created a coarser discourse, and everybody who says nasty things about people online does it because they believe they are, one, right, and two, ultimately doing something good. Even if I say something nasty about you, that's because you are in the wrong, and therefore I am defending a right position, and so it is okay for me to say things that are nasty or aggressive because, like, you know, I believe I am forwarding a righteous crusade. Well, everybody thinks that, whether you are defending the work of human artists, in the case of people who, let's say, like Starfleet Academy, but were disappointed by the possibility that AI was used to create these images that appeared in episode 6. You believe that you're in the right, and therefore you're strongly stating your opinion and being very coarse about it. But people who say that they hate Starfleet Academy because it is, you know, demonstrating a worldview that leads to, you know, like bad ends, they believe they're right too. And they believe that they can say nasty things about you because they are defending a position that they consider to be righteous. Now, whether you agree that their position is righteous or not, it all comes back to this fundamental piece of, if everybody is being nasty to everybody all of the time, how can we possibly ever have a realistic conversation and build a productive and constructive dialogue? And I know it's very easy, I've fallen into this trap myself, when you think you're in the right, to kind of dive very deep down a rabbit hole of being a dick about it. But I don't think the way out of the coarseness of the conversation happening around everybody right now is to just become more and more of a dick about everything. And so I just think this is an opportunity for folks to kind of take a step back, personally reflect on how we're talking about Star Trek Online. And again, this is not like if you have your principal position about something, you shouldn't sort of state that principal position, or everybody should only talk about good good things and only talk in nice ways. Debate's important. Debating things is important. But everything's just so nasty right now. And nastiness is never going to change anybody's minds about anything. And so if you just want to be nasty, okay, but like, you're not going to get anything out of that. And if your goal is to chastise the franchise for what you believe was the use of verboten technology, just leading into nastiness is not going to change anybody's mind. And you know, like, I'm beating a dead horse. Just think about what you write about Star Trek Online. Think about how it's contributing to the conversation. Be constructive. You don't have to be positive, but you do need to be constructive. That's the only way that you're ever going to get people to come alongside the things that you think about things. So I'm pleased, just begging people, be constructive, because the only other alternative is just not to do it. And I find myself increasingly not doing Star Trek social media because it's not constructive. It's just a destructive cycle on both sides of people being mean and nasty to each other. Anyway, Bill, what do you think about that?
Oh, no, 100% in agreement with you. It's why I've pulled away from a lot of conversation online. There just was nothing to get out of it but a headache, because people find one thing and they'll latch onto it, and it, like you say, it can't be constructive. It's only destructive conversations. And if your opinion does not line up exactly with theirs, then they take that anger out on you as well. And then you're the target of insults. It's not just the show, you're bad too, because you don't agree with whatever their opinion might be on it. And it's just been getting so tiresome. That's why, honestly, I was really happy when you invited me on the show, because I know you're not that kind of person. And I thought, oh, I can finally talk Star Trek with somebody I know who's going to be responsible with the conversation. Like you said, you don't have to like everything. And that's one of the rules I have on my channel too. When people come on, like, be honest, say what you feel. You don't have to like it, but somebody else will be liking the thing that you don't like. And it's not our position to make them feel bad about liking what they like. So be honest, get your opinions out, but don't be nasty about it.
Yeah. Don't be nasty about it. And that's why I am increasingly, to sort of bring our conversation full circle, I'm increasingly enjoying doing things like Star Trek Adventures with a group of friends where, you know, we get together for 2.5, 3 hours a month to tell a Star Trek story together and, you know, sort of chat, and there's small talk at the start and small talk in the middle and small talk at the end. Like, it's an opportunity to sort of like enjoy having a conversation with friends and doing something fun. And I mean, it's not necessarily constructive, but it is constructive because you're doing this thing and everybody's having a really nice time and it's so positive and you're enjoying each other's company and it's social and it's not just tapping out 180 characters or whatever the character limit is on Blue Sky and Threads and, you know, sort of just throwing that across the transom and seeing how people react to it. Like, it's the way that things should be, right? Like, this sort of, you're hanging out with friends and you're spending time with people you like rather than just arguing with people online.
And not only that, but you're creating brand new episodes of Star Trek that are just for you and your friends alone, and you're doing it as a recreational activity. And what's better than that?
Exactly. Do you have an opinion, theory, or wish about Star Trek that you'd like to share? Email them to me at weeklytrek@trekcore.com, and I might feature your thoughts in a future episode. Well, that's all the time we've got for this episode of Weekly Trek. Thank you so much to my guest, Bill Barbato, for joining me today. Bill, how can people contact you if they want to continue the conversation?
Usually you can find me on YouTube, on my channel at YouTube at The Final Frontiersman. That's my channel. I'm on some social medias, but like I said, don't really use it. But if you go onto Facebook in the Star Trek Adventures group, Reddit on Star Trek Adventures group, you'll run into me.
And you can find the show on X at Weekly Trek, and me at Alexander T. Perry on X, and at Alex T. Perry on Blue Sky, Threads, and everywhere else. And if you enjoy the show, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast player of choice. And for all your Star Trek news needs, in addition to our extensive media archives of all things Star Trek, I hope you will keep your senses locked to TrekCore.com. Well, thank you, Bill. Thank you to all of my listeners. And until next week, live long and prosper. Weekly Trek is a production of TrekCore.com and owned by Trapezoid Media, LLC.